Bill Gates is able to do whatever he's doing is because he's using the government machinery right now. If there is no government, he will not be able to do whatever he's doing. State is the problem. Now, if there is no WHO, if there is no United Nations, then Bill Gates has no power whatsoever to force us for vaccination or whatever he's tagging or whatever he's right now planning. So it is the system, the system of the government, the state, that is enabling him to put his ideas, whatever ideas, nefarious ideas he's having in his mind, into practice, right? So that's the main problem. You remove the state, Bill Gates is powerless.
Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Anarchy for Freedom, India's home for conspiracy research and free thinking. If you're new to this channel, please hit the bell icon, click the subscribe button, and like, comment, and share this video so that it reaches more people. Today, I'm very happy to have our returning guest, who always comes on and gives us a lot of insight with respect to his academic background and his knowledge, Dr. Madhusudan Raj. Hi, Madhusudan. Thanks for coming on again. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Yohan, for again inviting me to share my ideas and make people aware about the alternatives.
So we've been having a messed up last 2-3 months with everything that's been going on. No one is unaffected by the coronavirus pandemic or pandemic or scamdemic, what do you want to call it. And I want to do this segment today to basically talk about the economic fallout, because I'm covering the other aspects on my channel, but since we're talking about the economics and finance side of it, there's no one better and more educated to comment on this than Dr. Madhusudan, because he's an Austrian economist and he's spent almost his entire life focusing on the application of libertarian ideals towards solving society's problems, and that involves a lot of expertise in economics. So I guess, Madhusudan, where we could start with is, let's just analyze the effects of the lockdown, like what have been the economic ramifications and the, say, downstream unintended consequences of the lockdown, and probably give your views later on about how the government is trying to fix what it's caused with the lockdown.
Right. Okay, so as I have discussed, previously also, let me just remove this misconception straight away out of your audience's mind, that coronavirus is somehow responsible for the economic condition, the horrible economic condition that we are seeing right now. That is not the case, because as I have said, even before the coronavirus arrived, the world economy was struggling. It was struggling because of years of government manipulation, interventionist policies, and central bankers inflationary policies. So if you remember, since the beginning of the 20th century, the governments all around the world are becoming bigger and bigger. And beginning with 1913, the central bank in America was established, and then the central bankers really started messing up with the economy. So at that time, when central bank was established in USA in 1913, they had immediately the Great Depression in 1929. Now, those who want to understand deeply how central banks' manipulation of interest rate by increasing the supply of money creates the phenomenon of business cycle, I will advise them to read a couple of books like Murray Rothbard's The America's Great Depression, or Hayek's Prices and Production, and other such literature. But as I said, that particular policy of central bank of inflationism and governments bigger and bigger size and their heavy control and regulation of the market had already created lots of problem in the world economy, and Indian economy was struggling since long, and particularly since this present government came to power in 2014. So one after another policies this BJP government is following, like demonetization and GST, and after that the NRC and CAA protests were going on. Demonetization really broke the back of the camel. It really hammered the economy in the sense that it created a lot of problem for the informal sector. If you know, the Indian economy is basically 85-87% informal sector and only 15-13% formal sector. So in that case, when you're going to withdraw 85-87% of total money supply out of the economy, and where economy is around 90-95% cash economy, it really broke the back of the informal sector of the Indian economy. And that informal sector is what runs this country. Formal sector is a very small segment of that. So economy was already struggling before the coronavirus came. If you remember, since last 6 quarters, the GDP was continuously declining, and even before the COVID-19 lockdown started, the growth rate was something like 5%.
And we had some of the
So
highest inflation on record as well, right?
we had higher inflation, and we had highest 45-year high unemployment before the lockdown started. So unemployment rate, according to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, which is an independent institution organization collecting data on Indian economy, the official, unemployment rate was around 8% during that time itself. And after the lockdown has started, the economy has completely stopped down. So economy was already slowing down. And after demonetization came GST, and that really messed up the businesses. GST created so much of uncertainty into the economy that doing business almost become impossible, particularly for the small and marginal businessmen, because they don't have the wherewithal to kind of deal with the GST infrastructure. Big companies can hire people from outside, tax consultant, and they can install the software and sophisticated machinery to comply with GST. But small entrepreneurs, they cannot do all those things. So their mind were, their time and their energy were kind of diverted from production and from satisfying the consumers' needs to fulfilling all these GST requirements. And remember, this government is kind of very erratic in the sense they go on creating lots of uncertainties. So they will bring in one rule, and the very next day, or in evening itself, they will change the rule and something else will come. And there is very little coordination going on between different departments of the government, even local government. So for example, during the lockdown, if the local administration will say that there will be curfew after 7 p.m., the police will do something else. So everybody is interpreting the rules and regulation in their own way. Every man is making their own law. Now into these kind of uncertain environment, doing business becomes very, very difficult. Second thing is there is no security of property also. Businesses are very, very kind of businesses flourish where private property and our bodily property is safe. But in India, that is not the case. That before the lockdown started, there was a lot of harassment of businesses for tax compliance purposes. So there was this phenomenon going on of tax terrorism. So
The
many of
CCD
the
owner comes to mind.
exactly, the CCD owner committed suicide because of this tax terrorism, and many business people were also complaining. For example, Rahul Bajaj was complaining about this tax terrorism.
He's
There
been
is no
complaining now
certain.
about the lockdown as well.
He's been now complaining about the lockdown as well. He was complaining about the tax terrorism and the GST's complexities and everything also. But other businesses who were not complaining, they were also getting harassed. So an income tax department was also very, very aggressive in they're pursuing and sending notices to everyone. So in these kind of uncertain environments, businesses cannot do business, and they cannot make any kind of future planning of investment and reinvestment. What we want in our life is stability. What we want is little bit of certainty of future, because we as a human being don't like uncertainty. We like some pattern, and then we want to follow that so that we don't have to think much about everything. Now all the time is going into circumventing all this kind of complex maze of rules and regulation. So economy before the lockdown began was already struggling, and as I am saying, since long economy was dead, and the lockdown actually buried this economy some 10 feet under the ground now. So since last 2 months, all the businesses are almost completely stopped. All productive activities have stopped. We all know about the migrant workers problem, so I'm not going to talk about that. The country has become a land of total misery and apathy. Nobody is caring about anyone. So in these kind of environment, economy is completely finished. So I think yesterday the data came out, even the official data is now saying that before the lockdown began, the March quarter GDP was 3.1% only. Now that means, remember what the former chief economic advisor of Narendra Modi government, Arvind Subramanian, said in his study, that this government is overestimating the GDP numbers by around 2 to 2.5%. So if we go by that, and we all know that all these GDP numbers are heavily manipulated, all government statistics are heavily manipulated, then the economy is actually in the reverse gear right now. All these production activities have absolutely stopped. Now the GDP number for the lockdown period will arrive, and I think various rating agencies are already citing that the numbers are going to be negative. So that economy was already slowing down, and the lockdown just completely finished and buried it deep under. Now coming out of this is going to become very difficult, especially when the government is continue to do all the kind of wrong things that they are doing already. So let me talk about what steps this. So what I'm saying, in a very succinctly, let me tell you, is the mess is not because of the coronavirus. The mess is because of the government's interventionistic policies, totalitarian controls over the economy and our lives, and the central bank, which is RBI in India, their inflationary policies, their printing currency, printing money, and through that manipulating the market interest rate. These two are the major factors for economy slowing down and economy's problems.
I would
And
also add a
ultimately,
very important third factor being the mindset of the people who are watching and the other people in India itself. Because, the kind of policies the government has brought, like demonetization and GST, in the ordinary person's mind, they kind of get justified by thinking that, oh, black money is evil and it needs to be abolished. And what you're calling the informal economy is actually the sort of criminal underground economy that needs to be taken away, and in India needs to be got into the mainstream financial system. These buzzwords you keep hearing about financial inclusion and getting the poor in the banking system with these bank accounts that they created. All of this is also tacitly supported by the inaccurate, highly flawed understanding of the people as well.
that is a democracy's problem, so that we can discuss some other time. And ultimately, it all boils down to the culture. And let me tell you that culture ultimately boils down to the genetics, or genetics in the sense the gene culture, evolution that goes on. So underlying culture of the people is like that, and democratic system makes that more dangerous because the majority, which is doesn't understand, the masses who doesn't understand anything, they go and vote for different kinds of governments. So they are installing these kind of people, and ultimately voters are irrational. If anybody is thinking that voters are rational and they understand everything, then nothing can be more further from the truth than that. You just have to go and visit some voting booth on the day of election and see the characteristics of an average voter, and you will understand what horrible system democracy is. I have worked in this system as a presiding officer in 2014 election, so I know it very well. And even if you haven't worked as a administrator in this system, then also you just observe and you will come to know. So that obviously is a problem because all these leaders are elected by ultimately people themselves. So it is their desire, and many times inside they feel that there is something wrong, but they don't have the courage to openly go and criticize and openly go and oppose the government, oppose the wrong that is happening. Because in Indians, morality is not there, and these kind of positions requires very strong moral principles. If you have a moral principle, then you get the courage also to oppose the wrong. Doesn't matter it is done by BJP or done by Congress government or somebody else. That itself is a very wrong battle. BJP or Congress, that battle is very very wrong. It's the system that is dangerous. So anyway, I'm talking about RBI and the government's interventionist policy. So after the lockdown, what this government has done is Narendra Modi has come up with this new slogan or new policy of what they're calling Atmanirbhar Bharat, or what they're calling self-reliant India. So when I heard that, I was like, I don't know what these people are thinking, because during this lockdown, very serious thinking was required that how we can bring the economy out of the ground which is buried inside and kickstart everything. Actually, it is not very difficult if they can just remove all the regulations and interventions, and if they can abolish the GST or bring down the rates very, very drastically, income tax, etc., then I think economy will come back roaringly very quickly, because people always want to work. The problem is government is getting in between ourselves and our work. So if they just get out and just give up their power, politicians, then it is not at all difficult for the economy to come back. But I know that politicians are not going to give up their power very easily, or not at all, and that is our actual problem. What we require is a political will in the country for doing the right thing. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is, I mean, very, very illogical idea, because if you remember, human beings came out of forests some 4 million years ago, and they started trading with each other. So the reason why we are prosperous right now is because we are the only species which trades with each other. So exchanging goods is what makes us rich. So for example, if you have a tie and if I have a pen, if you don't require your tie and you require my pen, and I don't require my tie and I require your pen, then what we can do is we can both benefit by exchanging your tie for my pen. So you cannot produce your tie on your own, and I cannot produce my pen on your own. So what we can do is we can exchange. So we came out of the forest jungle with this very peculiar characteristic of trading. We started trading with family members first, and our local tribe, our relatives, and then the area started expanding, and now we started exchanging, trading with complete strangers, and that is foreigners. So trade is what makes us rich. It's what makes this civilization possible. So the whole idea of self-reliance is illogical. It's not very sound idea, because if you want to expose the fallacy which is inherent into the idea of self-reliance, then we can use the logical method of reductio ad absurdum. That means just stretch the logic of self-reliance to its ultimate limit, and we will understand that how illogical and how unsound the whole idea is. So for example, right now they are telling us to become self-reliant inside India. That means we don't have to trade with the foreigners like the Chinese or the Japanese or the Americans. So why just stop there? Why become self-reliant only up to that limit? Why not, for example, the people of Delhi, they become self-reliant and they stop trading with people of Haryana or people of Punjab or people of Gujarat? Why not you sitting in Mumbai only trade with Mumbaikars? Why you trade with Gujarati people? And in Mumbai also, suppose if you are living in Matunga, then why you trade with people of Churchgate, or why you deal with people of Andheri, for example? You can just trade with people who are living in Matunga. Why only in Matunga? If your society is there, suppose your society's name is White House Apartment, which is my society's name, then you only trade with the residents of White House. Why stop there? Why trade with them? Become completely self-reliant and stop trading with anybody and start producing everything on your own. Now you tell me, can you produce everything on your own? No. I cannot produce the shirt that I'm wearing right now. I cannot produce the microphone that I'm using right now. I cannot produce the ring that I'm wearing right now, or the trouser or the shoes that I'm wearing right now. You cannot produce all the things that you're using right now. Nobody can produce everything on their own. So if we really want to become self-reliant, then we have to go naked. We have to go back to jungle from where we are coming. So the whole idea of self-reliance is very unsound. What India right now needs is all kind of foreign help, right? For example, free trade with outside people is not only going to help the economy, but it will also help bring in the cultural changes in India, the culture that I'm talking about. So in India, the culture is collective. We don't have the idea of individual. We don't have the idea of freedom and liberty in this country. Nobody understands what freedom is. If you talk with somebody, then for them freedom means they can go and do whatever they want to. If they want to break down, a fan or somebody's TV, that's what they call freedom, which is not true. Freedom is basically a negative concept. It means what you cannot do with other people. So this culture has to come first. See, the solutions are much easy. Like if you want to bring the economy out of the recession or whatever problem it is finding itself right now, remove intervention, allow the system to work. We can say capitalism market will work, but then the problem is the underlying culture of the people. We don't have the idea of individual in this country, so nobody understands what is individual right. Nobody understands private property. When you understand the idea of individual, then you understand the idea of private property, self ownership first. And for example, this mouse that I'm holding, that is my property. Nobody understands that right now. And without this regime of private property rights, you cannot have a market. You cannot have market, you cannot have the capitalist system. So that culture will change if you're going to trade with outside people. For example, we trade with Britishers, we go there, they come here, their work culture will come to India. We hire the white people, we hire the Chinese, we hire the Japanese, we hire the Taiwanese, they hire us because some kind of skills they don't have, the skills that they are having, we don't have. And these kind of cultural interaction exchanges will bring in new values, and interaction, this kind of cultural interaction will change the Indian culture over a period of time. And then we can expect better things to happen in this country. Now, when you're going to lock yourself inside your country, when you're going to raise the wall of protectionism, you're not going to interact with anyone. What is going to happen is the Indian society is going to stagnate now. Now, stagnation means it is going to stink ultimately. Stagnated water will start stinking, right? And ultimately, it will decay and the society will fall apart because there is no infusion of fresh ideas coming from outside. The competition will die out because the Indian, traders, Indian entrepreneurs, sellers, producers will not have to compete with the foreign competitors. So they can just relax and continue to provide the suboptimal, inferior, horrible goods and services to their customers. We all will be compelled to buy from them because the government is simply going to stop the foreign trade. They're going to raise, barriers, tariff barriers, and import quotas and everything. So we will be forced to use inferior services. So our standard of living is basically going to go down. And remember, when consumers are losers, the whole society is a loser because at the end of the day, consumers are everything. So entrepreneurs are not going to learn anything. Society is not going to learn anything. Other people, because we will have to spend more money now because the locally manufactured items are going to be very costly. And that was the reason why we were buying the goods from outside, because outside goods were cheaper and of better quality. So now we will be forced to spend more money. That means we have little money left to buy other things. So other manufacturers in India, they are going to struggle because of this Atmanirbhar or self-reliant India policy. It's very funny thing. Whenever these things I hear, I keep on remembering Jawaharlal Nehru. Remember, this government very much criticizes Jawaharlal Nehru. But whatever policies I am seeing Narendra Modi following, it just reminds me of what Nehru was doing. So Nehru was also for very heavy central planning. This government is also about very heavy central planning. Nothing must escape the control of Delhi, PMO. Everything must go through them. They must say yes and no, only then a muscle can move into this country. Nehru was like that. He also opted for import substitution and inward looking policies. That means he did not allow foreign trade. Now I can understand during Nehru's time because the phobia of East India Company was still there. People were worrying that if the foreign MNCs will be allowed to do business in India, then they will again capture India like what the British East India Company did.
That is
That kind of
exactly,
fear.
just to play devil's advocate a little bit, that is exactly the worry that a lot of people have right now. Because, I mean, people can understand that, okay, if we set up boundaries and if we follow protectionism and nationalism to its logical conclusion, it'll basically result in everyone becoming an island to himself, where everyone has to produce everything by himself. But it's like, because of this Swadeshi kind of mentality that a lot of people have, they've grown sour with a lot of MNCs because they associate the multinational companies with coming in and destroying our culture and like flooding us with fast food and the pharmaceutical cartel and everything. So they basically want to move from like supporting them towards supporting like homegrown organic kind of system. So what is the problem in their mindset according to you?
I think what is so great about the Indian culture, I don't understand. I mean, see, every culture has its pluses and minuses. It is up to us what kind of values we want to learn from the foreigners. Right now, the problem, what the problem is, for take for example, Bollywood or local culture, Hollywood movies. We, most of the Indians think that the kind of movies that Hollywood makes represents the Western culture, which is not the reality. That kind of movies are ghetto culture, the lowest strata culture in America. The real Western values, like as I said, morality, rationality, individuals, rights, private property, peace, these kind of things Indians are not learning. So it is up to us what kind of values we want to imbibe from the foreigners. What we can do is that we can learn the good values and discard the bad values. No culture is perfect. But if you're not going to interact at all with somebody outsider, then how are you going to change? And thinking that Indian culture is the best of the best and it is great and there are no flaws in Indian culture is I think chimera, is utopian thinking. There are so many bad things in India. I mean, remember, if Britishers came over here, they did many good things also. Remember Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who is known as the architect of modern India, who he was very much influenced by the Britishers. In fact, he was buried in London. He's not buried in India. So they brought the English education, and it was Raja Ram Mohan Rai who lobbied the viceroy of that time to bring in foreign education, English education, Western education in India, instead of starting a Sanskrit university in Calcutta. So that kind of, everybody who came from outside, Gandhi studied in UK, Nehru studied in UK, they were all influenced by the foreign ideas, and that is how they brought the independence movement in this country. Gandhi, for example, was very much impressed with the writing of people like Henry David Thoreau or Leo Tolstoy. So these ideas, they come from outside. Even Indian ideas, this Marxism, for example, the leftist Marxist ideas, they are not homegrown. They come from outside. Karl Marx was not an Indian. So what we have good in India, we accept that absolutely. But what we don't have, something which is bad, we must discard that. And if something we find good from outsiders, then why not learn that?
And
So
if I can give some of
interaction.
my own views as well on this, I would say to these people who think like this, it's like, just because we are trading with people from the outside doesn't necessarily mean you have to support these big multinationals who are like, trying to basically like make us sick and not have our best interests at heart. But you can always, support local homegrown or like businesses that have their morals in line with yours, but who are from outside, and that still results in more prosperity, because if someone outside who can produce the product at a better quality and a lower price than someone in your neighboring vicinity, you're going to be more profitable at the end of the day, and you're still going to keep your morals and values and probably learn something from outside cultures that we don't have. And what Madhusudan is saying is very true. This is the reason that even though we had such a big Indian freedom movement and like we overthrew the British and everything, there's still barely an understanding of like true freedom or liberty in this country. And I think like importing some of the ideas from the West, from the classical liberal tradition that basically like created the American independence movement over there, getting some of those ideas out here, and that would actually like help us go a long way forward. And even the ideas that we both are speaking from right now, like drawing from the Austrian school and the libertarian school, a lot of the academic work that has been done in actually figuring out how society can function without the state has been done by impeccable authors abroad, and barely anyone in India is doing this stuff other than Madhusudan on an academic level. So there is a lot of merit to trading with people from abroad for a wide variety of reasons, like I just mentioned.
Right, and understand these MNCs can exploit the conditions in India because they are using the government machinery of this country. So I will not blame them. Remember, British East India Company did not come to do whatever they were doing. They came here for trading. What happened is they found out that the local rulers were fighting with each other, and then because of that fight there was some kind of vacuum of power being created, so they were just filling that vacuum. I mean, they did not come here to attack anyone, they just came to trade with Indians. It were the Indian rulers who were inviting them to help them, in their battle with the local rulers. So the problem again is with the local culture.
And the problem
I mean,
ultimately just comes down to the belief in authority itself, because as long as people continue to believe in authority, then someone
right.
can come and hijack that government and take over the machinery, and then you have to obey them, which is
So that
exactly
is
what
your
happened.
problem.
Yeah,
So that is your problem. If a handful of Britishers can rule over crores of Indians, then I don't see that as a problem with Britishers. I see that as a problem with Indians.
yeah,
It is your culture that allowed the Britishers to, rule for 250 years in this country.
very true.
So we
Yeah,
need to do a lot of, introspection. Instead of blaming outsiders all the time is not going to help, right? You look at yourself in the mirror, right? That is where the problem is, and you cannot change somebody who is, a foreign or other person. You can change yourself. So you change yourself and the society will change. That's what Gandhi said.
very true. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Maybe now we can talk a little bit about the solutions the government has proposed to the unnecessary and immoral lockdown, in my opinion, that they implemented themselves. What are the ramifications going to be of these packages that the government is announcing, of like figures like 20 lakh crores and all these big subsidies being given to industries and stuff? Like, what is the actual impact of that going to be in terms of inflation and like eventually hyperinflation and the other downstream consequences of all this?
Right. So as you said, we are risking hyperinflation right now. Remember this 20 lakh crore, or what they're calling 20 trillion rupees. Out of that, around 8 to 9 trillion rupees are already being printed by the RBI. So government is saying that this is not going to add into their fiscal deficit because RBI is printing it. Now, obviously, this is nothing but monetizing the deficit. So when RBI is printing and pushing so much of money into the economy, that money is going to go into some sector, and it will start to slowly lift the prices. So we are actually risking a hyperinflation kind of situation right now. Why hyperinflation? Because on one side the production is not taking place, it is completely stagnant right now, and on the other side government is putting money into business people's and poor people's hand. They are going to go and spend that money, so the demand for money is going to go down, and the supply of money is already high. So that is going to reduce the purchasing power of rupees. Actually, that means higher prices. And once the inflation goes out of hand like 50, 100%, then as I said, the government will not be able to bring it back because it feeds on expectation. If we expect prices to go up, we go and spend. And at the moment we go and spend, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Prices go up, we again go and spend, and then goes out of hand. So by printing so much of money, RBI is actually risking hyperinflation. The second thing is it is just going to destroy, further damage the capital and production structure. As I said, the manipulation of interest rate. Remember, they again reduced the interest rate in last MPC meeting. So this governor Saktikanta Das, since he came to power like 1.5 years ago, he has reduced rates by some 6 or 8 times, which is a record right now. So interest rates are historically low. That is going to distort the whole production structure. That means the money is going to flow into the direction where it is actually not needed, because the decisions of investments are taken by the central bankers and the government. So government will say that let this loan go into this sector, or let the money flow into that sector. Now it is not necessary that that sector, whatever goods that sector is producing, is actually demanded by the consumer. So what we are going to do is we are going to produce so many cars, for example, or so many apartment buildings, and they are going to remain unused, like what already happened. Now the auto bubble is bursting and the real estate bubble is bursting. With this $8 trillion and all the money that government is going to spend, they're just going to create more new bubbles. And these new bubbles are going to burst in future, destroying the capital base of our economy. With historically low interest rates, governments are now discouraging saving. So when you're not going to save, the investment fund is not going to come forward. And without investment and capital accumulation, there is no higher future income, there is no growth, there is no progress. So all these policies that the government is following right now, and they think that it is consumption that is important. Consumption is never important. It is the production that is very important, because remember, without producing anything, you cannot consume. So all these policies are just going to waste tremendous amount of resources in the already resource poor country like India. So that ultimately means overall, if I have to tell you very quickly, a poor future. So we are becoming poorer and poorer as the days are going by, because we are destroying our capital and production structure. We are wasting our resources. What was actually required was the government to tighten their belt, reduce their expenditure drastically, leave a lot of money in the hands of people. People will know where they want to spend their money, and that would have immediately started the investment going and the economic activity going. But with the central planning, the government is in control of everything. And remember, central plannings always fail, because socialism cannot calculate economically. Governments don't know where is the actual profit and where is the actual losses. So ultimately, there is nothing positive going to come out. We are going to waste resources. We are going to become poorer and poorer as the day go by. And ultimately, I feel like we are going back to jungle.
Yeah, and it is almost impossible for the government to like give up its own power and implement the solutions we are suggesting unless people understand these ideas themselves and put like direct pressure through non-cooperation and other means to actually reduce the state's power itself over them. They're not going to come and do it for us because they will eventually want more taxation, because of the amount of debt that they are undergoing in order to be able to finance all these social welfare programs and bailouts that they're doing right now. So that grip is going to keep tightening and tightening on us until we finally realize the main solution and put pressure on society, on our friends, on our family, and make everyone understand this and then start to implement it in real life. That's the
Okay.
only way things are going
Let,
to
let,
change.
okay. Let me just add one more thing, Johan. Anybody who is looking for a solution out of this mess, I do not think so. The solution is there. Solution in the sense something positive. This is going to continue, and ultimately, what I see is a big reality or a big possibility of Indian nation state itself disintegrating. We are already seeing border areas are now on fire. China is becoming very aggressive on the Ladakh front, and Kashmir is also igniting again. And as the central government will become weaker financially and economically, India is internally exploding right now. You can see the states have started fighting in between. So the Uttar Pradesh chief minister recently was saying, Yogi Adityanath, that if other states want to get the UP and Bihar UP migrant worker, then they have to ask for his permission. So states are now fighting, and ultimately this will result into the disintegration of this country. That will take time, but it can happen also very quickly, because it takes a lot of time to build something, but it takes very little time to just bring it down. Unraveling will be very fast. So I see here and there all these indication that where we are going, Indian nation state, I do not think so will survive for very long. It is not going to survive forever for sure, because every state's collapse in the end. Financially and economically weaker state means it is not going to be in a position to defend itself. So outside will take the chance. You can see Nepal is becoming very, very belligerent now. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Nepal could have never thought of becoming so aggressive against India. But now they are demanding that the Indian government remove their troops from Kalapani areas. And they are claiming some of the territories that India is already claiming. Whether they are backed up by China or not, that doesn't matter, because now, if Nepal is also going to become very aggressive, then tomorrow Sri Lanka will become aggressive, and obviously Pakistan and China, they are aggressive in any case. So the border areas, we are going to see splintering and ultimately the collapse. So, and I think that is what is required, because ultimately when the nation state, this giant nation state, which was put together by Patel and Nehru forcefully, when that will collapse and India will go back, the Indian subcontinent will go back to its reality, historical reality of small, small independent principalities. then maybe we'll have better chances of implementing new ideas. So that is the direction in which we are going. I do not think so this situation can be salvaged now.
Yeah, the sort of light is always the dimmest right before the sun sets, so to speak, until the dawn arrives. So, we might be looking at a grim future, but it's ultimately pain and sort of, wearing down of old institutions and ideas that actually paves the way for us as a species to move forward and, to be able to seize opportunities in order to build a future that is in line with what we want instead of what has been forced down on us. So, I guess before we go to the solution as to like what individuals can do in times like these to actually like keep themselves afloat and manage to come out of this in a relatively positive fashion compared to others. I guess maybe you can just give your views on the labor laws. Like they're sort of the government is meddling with the labor laws right now, and they are sort of removing them to some extent. Although it's not like what we would want ideally, and they're also like telling entrepreneurs and to pay salaries to people and stuff. So what are the kind of effects of that? Because a lot of good-hearted people, they see the condition of the migrants and other people, and they're like, no, like these people need some kind of living wage in order to survive, and they're all for the government forcing the companies to pay. But like it always comes down to praxeology. Like if you just follow the science of human action, if it is not profitable for an entrepreneur to hire someone, like why are they going to pay them at that price? So just discuss the downstream consequences of these policies that people perceive to be good.
See, in the first place, they should have not installed all these labor laws to begin with, because all this labor legislation, what they do is that they just create unemployment, nothing else. Because they don't allow the market to function properly, the labor market. If the wages are flexible, if they go up and down according to the underlying changes in the demand and supply condition, then the market will clear. So if there is excess labor available in the economy, in the labor market, then that will suppress the wages, and all these extra labor will be absorbed into the employment, because now employer will not have to pay them higher wages. If the wages are very high, then that will bring in fresh labor supply, bringing the wages to its natural level again. What this legislation, for example, like minimum wage law or employment protection law or maternity benefit law or bonus or payroll or wage equality laws, what they do is they interfering into the functioning of the labor market, and by doing that it just creates unemployment, nothing else. So if they want to remove it, then I think they should remove it completely. Why just soften it up for a while? Just remove it, and whatever poor people or whatever migrant laborers we are having, we can take care of them with private charity. As I said, they can just abolish the GST, let's say bring down the income tax rate or abolish the income tax for 5 years or 3 years, for example. Something like Lagan can be done, right? If Britishers can forgive the taxes of poor farmers during the time of famine, then this is our own government. Why can't they just let go a little bit of revenue right now? They can just say that, see, in any case, the government is saying that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to become Atmanirbhar. So to become Atmanirbhar, we require our resources. So just give us our resources back and we will take care. The government, I promise you don't have to worry about anything. Okay, you just remove all the taxation and everything. We have a lot of money. We will do private charity. I mean, there are many good Samaritan, in India who will come forward and help the migrant workers.
And it is
Because
only the good Samaritans who are doing the work right now. Actually, if you go to see on the ground, the government is barely,
exactly,
hardly doing anything. Yeah, it's just people like us and other
government is
people who are,
only government is only creating more problems. That's it.
yeah.
So ultimately, we are helping each other, the society members. The government will be nowhere. I remember when in 2006 we experienced big floods in Surat city, and after that we conducted survey, and we found out that people were helping each other. There was no government helping anybody, and that is what we are seeing even today, where the migrant workers are walking, the local villagers are coming out and giving them food and giving them water and giving them shelter, and individuals, good Samaritans, are coming out and helping everybody. So, and there are many unsung heroes. Those who are taking videos are people who are maybe hungry for popularity, but there are many unsung heroes who are helping these people without any kind of credit. So private charity will always be there. We don't do private charity right now because what we think is that we have already paid our taxes, and it is the job of the government to take care of all these migrant workers or poor people. So we think that how much more we are going to do, we are already paying our taxes. But if we don't have to pay our taxes, then that instinct or helping each other will come up again.
No,
And
and
private
look,
charity will come.
despite the heavy levels of taxation, we are still going out right now and helping people in times of need. So, like, people just need to imagine if the government actually reduces the tax rates and reduces stranglehold on, like, the tight control of everyday movements of people's lives, we will actually be helping each other out more. And as we see in times like these, the government is not helping people to a large extent. It is people like us who are helping. So, what do people want? Do the people want more taxes to the government so that we are forced to sort of pay our fair share, or as we see in reality, like shrink the government and give more resources to the people who actually own them so that they can actually go out and help people like it's happening right now?
Right. Not only private individuals will help, but religious establishment, for example. Remember, before government, there were temples and mosques and churches. They used to do the welfare work. So they will come forward. They have huge resources. They can, for a while, take care of all these people. And once they are on their own, once they start doing their work, they can go back and start employment, and they can on their own living. They don't have to be helped forever. They just need the help for when this lockdown or whatever is pandemic is going on. So religious institutions will come up, local charity establishments will come up, philanthropists will come up. I'm sure many business people will do that, right? So many alternative institutions which the state has killed right now, so that we individual only depend on the state, on the government, they will automatically spring up, and society will bring in the order. There is no kind of sense in thinking that without the government we cannot survive or we cannot organize our society. Far from the truth. We will be able to survive, not only survive but thrive, and bring in a lot of order into our society. It is this government, not just the BJP government. I'm saying the system, the government system, on its own, the state is creating all these problems for us. So they can just give the tax breaks and allow us to help each other. And I'm telling you, we will be back from this mess within few months time if the government just simply gets out.
And
But they are not going to get out. That's the problem.
surely those philanthropists you're speaking about will be much better than Bill Gates, who's like involved to a large extent behind driving all
Well,
of this right now.
yeah, I don't have, see, Bill Gates is able to do whatever he's doing is because he's using the government machinery right now. If there is no government, he will not be able to do whatever he's doing.
So I
If
saw an
it is,
important picture the other day that it basically said the real enemy is not the rich, but it's the rich people who use the government to control you. So that's who
right,
we
so
need to be
it's
focusing on.
exactly, so the state is the problem. Now, if there is no WHO, if there is no United Nations, then Bill Gates has no power whatsoever to force us for vaccination or whatever he's tagging or whatever he's right now planning. So it is the system, the system of the government, the state, that is enabling him to put his ideas, whatever ideas, nefarious ideas he's having in his mind, into practice, right? So that's the main problem. You remove the state, Bill Gates is powerless.
Very true. Yeah. So let's end on a more positive note because we've given people some grim predictions of what's to come. Uh, and I guess our message is just going to be the same as every time that we talk about solutions. At least when it comes to the financial realm, it is all about like understanding how the banking system works and eventually like taking your wealth out of the banking system. Because we're seeing right now with this whole virus scare, one of the main agendas that's being pushed, which is something that the power structure on the planet has wanted for a very long time, is the elimination of
Right.
cash so that we get
Right.
trapped in that technocratic control grid. So,
Right. Yeah.
maybe just touch on like what people need to do in order to secure their wealth at this time. Because I think
Right.
that's very important for
Right.
people to understand.
Right. Right. I just missed mentioning that the banking crisis also is coming, because all these loans that these banks are pushing, it is not going to come back. It is going to result into NPA. And remember, before the lockdown started, many banks were already collapsing. That is only going to accelerate. So in these kind of times, when banks are inherently insolvent all the time, they're just going to come crashing down. So putting so much of money in the banks is going to be a big risk. Right now, for the middle class, people with not a lot of money, the only easy option is the precious metals, gold and silver. As I have always said, you can talk about Bitcoin if they are ready to understand and know the risk, pluses and minuses of Bitcoin, then they can go into that. That you can talk about. I always prefer gold and silver. They are the safest, kind of precious metals to store. I mean, I don't like them because they are just going to reduce. I mean, lock in the purchasing power. So economy is not going to benefit. But what can we do right now? Because right now safety is the big concern. Growth or progress or increasing income is not at all an issue. Right now, the biggest worry is whatever we have earned, how to safeguard it. And
And
that is the reason why.
this is the biggest problem with the government, right? Because they demonize gold, saying it's unproductive and it doesn't really help the economy. But that's not true at all. It is very, very productive for people like us because it saves us from the inflationary policies, which they don't want basically.
Right, productivity comes next, first comes life. So productivity will be there when we are alive. If we are going to die, then what are we going to do with productivity? So as I said, safety is first issue right now. Growth and progress will be later on when things become certain, when we know that our property and our asset, our wealth is going to be safe in this country, then we can start investing. As long as that is not the case, forget about investing right now. You have to just safeguard your life and your property right now. And nothing better than gold and silver. Remember, prices have already started to go up and they will continue to rise with the inflation. So that is like, see gold as an insurance policy, don't see as an investment vehicle because it is not. See it as a cash, hard cash in your hand. You can, it's very liquid. Just go and use it in the market if you want to buy something. So that is one thing. Second thing is diversification of risk geographically. Very rich people can think of investing abroad, safeguarding their income by putting that abroad. But remember, overall world situation is becoming horrible. Hong Kong is also not safe now. So what else can be more safer? Tomorrow Singapore can also blow up. We don't know, right? So uh, something that is in your hand is preferable right now. And then look for better jurisdiction, geographic, political jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction, a government which is not going to fleece you very much, which is not going to tax you very highly. Maybe if you can immigrate or emigrate there, you can just leave this country there. So diversification of risk is very important. Safeguarding life, not from the coronavirus. Coronavirus is not very dangerous, but safeguarding your life from these government parasites is what is important. The state parasites is what is of priority right now.
Very true. Yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. And the reason that I have always been so bullish on Bitcoin is because although I give a lot of importance to the precious metals and I hold significant amount of value in both of them, but the problem that we're facing right now is the government is surely going to get tyrannical and they're going to come after our assets if they start to go insolvent. We've seen this happening in cases in the past in America that the government has always tried to go for people's gold. And even here in India, I think since a couple of years there's been talk of trying to get people's gold in through the sovereign gold bond scheme, and trying to crack down on temples saying that they do have too much stored gold in them. So Bitcoin is kind of a very good complement to gold because it lets you store your value in a form that is unconfiscatable. Because I mean, although you want something that's physically there with you, which will be acceptable in times where you say you want to trade with someone and cash is not an option with the way the money is losing its purchasing power right now. But Bitcoin also lets you keep some of your value in a way that can't come and be stolen from you in a, say, a government crackdown or a government freezing your assets or something. So that's the reason why I think both are sort of complementary and important.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah. So I guess that's the note we can end on, and I hope people appreciate all the work you're doing and all the ideas you're trying to spread with awakening Indian people. Because these, I mean, to most people hearing this, I'm sure they've never heard any of these perspectives on television or in the education system. So maybe let viewers know where they can find your work and check out some of the stuff that you're doing in India.
So I have my own institution called Mises India Institute. So they can check all my articles and other my workshop and everything that I'm doing on misesindia.in. In July, we are coming up with our regular workshop of Libertarianism 101. So if some of your audiences want to understand the idea of liberty, they can come to Surat and attend that workshop. Mises India has its YouTube channel also where we keep on putting different interviews. I have also my own YouTube channel where I put my own analysis. Madhusudan Raj TV, they can find out on YouTube. So these are the places where your audiences can follow my work, mainly on Mises India Institute website, misesindia.in.
All right, great, Madhusudan. Thank you so much for coming here. And to the audience, please do your bit, like, subscribe, and share this video so that you can help spread the message of liberty and freedom to other Indians around you. All right, great. Thanks for coming on, Madhusudan. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you very much. Good night.